Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here, out in the shop with another great video for you today. And today we've got a topic that a lot of people have chimed in and asked about, and we're here to address it today. And the topic is, what would be my top 3 lure choices for extreme conditions? Top 3 lures for extreme conditions. Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to talk about what these extreme conditions are. And there's a lot of extremes in fishing. We could probably create a list of extremes that's 3 or 4 pages long. But for as long as I've been doing it, there's 3 extreme conditions that I see come up a lot. And I mean traveling nationally across the country, I see these 3 extreme conditions happen more often than not. And I'm going to give you a lure choice for each of those extreme conditions. Let's start with the first extreme condition. And this happens everywhere you're fishing. I don't care where you live, United States, Canada, Mexico. I don't care if you're in Asia or Europe or South America. You're going to experience this extreme condition at one time or another. And you ready for it? High, dirty water. And high, dirty water happens everywhere because of rainfall, right? Because of rainfall. Precipitation, snow melt, storms, dam releases. A lot of places you're going to see that water rise up and get dirty or get more stained than it was before the rise. That's an extreme condition, because if you're out there fishing and in a 24-hour period, one day, your water level rises just a foot, that's a lot to a fish. That's a lot to a bass. I've seen it in some cases after a heavy downpour. I've seen the water level rise 5, 10 foot above where it was just a day or two before. And again, a lot of times on that rise, you also get water that's more stained, dirty. Sometimes it's mud, sometimes it's chocolate milk. So think about, number 1, extremely high and dirty water, right? The water just took a giant rise. It rose 6 inches to 10 feet. There's one lure that is the best lure for those extreme conditions. And that is the good old-fashioned jig. The good old-fashioned rubber skirted jig. And when you look at this bait, there's 2 reasons why I would have to put this as my lure choice for extremely high and stained to dirty water, right? That extreme condition. One would be how we can fish it, right? The places we can fish it. And the other one would be its versatility to do a lot of things. But generally, let's think about that high rising, it rose 2 foot overnight. You get there, you're like, oh my God, I can't see I can't see those rocks I was fishing. I can't see the stump I was flipping. And what happens generally when water rises and gets dirty is the fish rise with the water, okay? The old saying, this is a real easy one for you to remember when you're out on the water. Rising water, rising fish. Rising water, rising fish, right? If your water comes up, that fish is smart, dude. He's smart. He feels it. He knows what's happening, right? Instinctively, that fish feels the rise. That fish goes on up in there. And to fish that newly flooded water, Sometimes it goes into bushes. Sometimes it goes into docks. Sometimes it goes up into new rocks or bank grass or anything, right? I've flipped park benches and porta potties before the water's been so high. But that jig, skirted jig with a fiber guard. By the way, this is a missile mini flip or a flip out, or two of my favorite jigs. That jig has the ability to get in and out of that new cover. And you can fish it easily, right? It's not going to get snagged. It's going to come in and out. The missile mini flip does a great job in and out. And when fish rise with that water, and especially if it gets dirty, listen to me here, you ready? They get tight to cover, right? Rising water that's more stained, they want to be in it and on it. And outside of a Texas rigged punching or flipping bait, there's nothing better than a jig. I like the jig better. I think it's more versatile. I use different trailers. I use a chigger crawl. I use the power chunk, max scent chunk. But the other thing is the versatility of a jig when you have those extreme high dirty water conditions. Is I could fish it on the bottom, slow and low if the water was cold. The water's warm. I can swim the jig through that newly flooded cover. I can stroke it, pop it out of rocks if that water rises into rocks. The versatility makes this my choice for that extreme condition. Last thing I'd mention, if the water does get dirty, the dirtier the water gets, the more I like those dark colors. I get away from the watermelons and green pumpkins, the more translucent colors, and I go to these colors that have a lot of black in them, black and blue, black and chartreuse, colors that stand out, okay? So for my first lure for extreme conditions, for high rising water, high water with stain to mud in it, can't beat a skirted jig. Since we're talking about it, let's just flip the switch the other way. The second most common condition I find all over the country, all over the world, is the opposite of what we just talked about. And here it goes. You ready? Extreme low water. And when that water drops or gets low, it typically gets clean. It gets clear, right? So now we're the opposite. We talked about high rising water that's typically gets dirty. Now we're talking about water that's dropped and typically gets clean. And that's an extreme condition. Just like the extreme high water, I've showed up the very next day, 24 hours later, and I saw a 12 to 14 inch drop in the water. I've seen it where a week later, the water was 5 or 10 foot lower. I fished Lake Mead, the US Open. The water was 300 feet low because of drought conditions, right? So lack of rain or lack of water, or when in a reservoir or a river that has a dam, they decide to open that gate. They open that gate up. It causes that water to get low. And generally when your water gets low, it gets cleaner or clean. And that's a tough extreme condition. Fish during those conditions do the opposite of rising water. What was our rule for rising water? You remember? I do. It was about 3 minutes ago. Rising water, rising fish. Falling water, falling water, falling fish, right? Real easy rule to remember. You get to the lake, you go to launch your boat, you're like, crap, the water level dropped 2 feet. Falling water, falling fish. And generally what those fish do is they know, just like they knew it was rising, they know it's falling, they feel it. And when they feel that water coming down, dude, they head for the hills. They fall back. They want to get out of there. Because if that fish was to stay up there in that newly flooded cover, guess what? He's going to be flopping around sooner or later. So they know. And when that water has dropped and it's falling and it's getting clean, the fish fall back. And they generally fall back to the first deep water break line, right? That's really relative to where you're fishing. So it doesn't matter, you know, if you're in Florida, your break lines are a lot shallower. A deeper break could be a foot or two difference. In a reservoir out west, it could be 40, 50 foot drop off. But they want to be near deep water. And they typically, you ready for this one? This is a tough one. They typically suspend. It's a very difficult fish to catch. When I thought of my lure choice for extreme falling water, typically clean, I had 3 lures go through my head. A suspending jerkbait, a swim bait, but the one that got the nod, because when I think of the ability to control this lure, this one got the go ahead, and it's one that's not fished a lot, and it is a tail spinner. A tail spinner. They used to call this a Little George. This is a Molix Trago Spin Tail. Regardless of what you call it, it's a little piece of lead with a spinner on the tail. Look at that. Look at how this Molix Trago Spin Tail, by the way, the swivel is built into the tail. It's one of the great features of this bait. And the spinner actually spins. It's a ball bearing swivel. This lure gives you a tremendous amount of control, but gives you flash and vibration as well. You don't see that with a lot of lures. The problem with the jerkbait is you're limited to 0 to about 10 feet. The problem with the swim bait is the swim bait's very visual, not a lot of flash and vibration, right? These tail spinners, right? This spin tail gives you the ability to control the lure with flash and vibration. So I'm looking at areas that I've already been fishing before it got low, right? Let's say you're in a main creek arm or a giant cove. And those areas I was fishing before the drop, I stay in those areas. I look at my map and I look for the first break, the first deep water break. And again, it's relative to where you live. But when I see that, and a lot of times in a creek or a cove or a pocket, it takes the form of a secondary point or a main point that has a little deep water running next to it. A deep water channel or a deep water drop or a river channel. And those fish instinctively back off and they'll suspend on that drop. I look at my electronics, I identify the level of the forage, the level of the fish that I'm seeing, and I count this spin tail down to that level, and I can steady retrieve or yo-yo and pump the lure through the level of the fish. It's a tremendous lure for catching these fish that have backed out and suspend. Flash, vibration, the ability to control the depth, all make this my choice for extreme condition number 2, low falling, low dropped water, and a lot of times it's clean, okay? On color, match the forage. I carry very few colors, just mimic the forage color. All right, we got 2 under our belt. Extreme high water, stain to dirty. Extreme low water, clear to ultra clear. And last but not least, I'm going to give you my 3rd condition that I see a lot. And it is something that we have to deal with. It's more of a thing that I see every year. I see more of it. And it is extreme crowded conditions. Extreme fishing pressure. Man, for crying out loud, there are more people fishing now than there's ever been in the history of the world. There's more people alive. The information highway's greater. With COVID, man, there's people fishing You can hardly go to a lake, I don't care where you live, and not see 10 or 20 cars, trucks and trailers in the parking lot. Extreme fishing pressure. And in my lifetime, I've really had to deal with this a lot, whether it's tour fishing, growing up here in New Jersey, where we have smaller lakes and a lot of people. Extreme fishing pressure. And let me tell you, it does affect the fish. Can you imagine being a fish and the boat noise and the trolling motor noise and the amounts of spinner baits and rattle traps and buzzing, rattling lures that are thrown by you? You think about that, right? Tournaments on a Saturday or Sunday, there's tournaments everywhere. 300, 500 boat tournaments in Texas, Louisiana, Florida, California. That's ridiculous. But for extreme fishing pressure, I found one lure that is the deal. Just like for those suspended fish we talked about, man, I could come up with a list of 5 or 6 good ones. But if I had to pick one, guys, it's an easy choice. Here it goes. You ready? Soft plastic stick bait. Soft plastic stick bait. A lot of different sizes. I carry them from 4 inches all the way up to 7. I really, really love this one. This is the middle of the road size. It's a 5 or a 5.25. This is a 5.25. This is the Berkley Powerbait General. I also love it in max scent. But you know this bait, guys. It's a soft plastic stick bait, AKA Magic Hot Dog. Look at it. And this lure, because of the action and because of the different ways we can rig it, is my top bait for extreme fishing pressure. If I launch my boat and I want to go fish that bank, and I already see 2 or 3 dudes over there, this is the lure I'm throwing. If I'm having a fun fishing weekend with my son Vegas, and there's a 300 boat tournament going on, this is the lure that I'm picking. And the action plus the versatility make this the best choice for that extreme condition. You know, basically when you wacky rig this thing, and I love to wacky rig it, show you one of my favorite hooks for wacky rigging it. We've got a VMC weedless Nico hook. Depending on the size of the bait, I like the number 1 or number 2 size. This is a great one because it's got a little fiber guard on it, and I can fish it around cover. I can fish in open water. It doesn't matter. VMC Nico hook. When I wacky rig this bait, which means just hooking it in the middle, it has a shimmy, almost like a wag, this very like pulse as the bait falls, right? You know, it's almost like a ball and chain, and as that bait falls, it just pulses down real natural. I can fish it weightless. I can stick a little nail weight in it for deeper water. And that action, that little for fish that are pressured, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like the drawing power of that action, right? So I can rig it wacky. I can fish it with a weight for deeper water, without a weight for shallower. It's a great lure for extreme fishing pressure. I could take that same lure, I could rig it Texas style with a worm weight. I could flip it, I could pitch it, right? Everybody else is flipping big noisy baits. This subtle thing comes in the cover Texas style, and it almost just slides in real quiet and natural. All the other dudes are noisy, quiet, natural, subtle, random fall, Texas rigged, fishing on a shaky head. I can take the 4-inch version or bite this one down. I can drag it on a Ned head on gravelly, rocky bottoms for smallmouth. I could drop shot it. It's got that subtle action, that little neutral quiver. And for pressured fish, they can't help themselves. When they ignore all those other lures, especially those big, noisy power fishing lures, they will bite this. I promise, for extreme fishing pressure, there's nothing like the subtle natural, neutral action of a soft plastic stick bait, a General. Man, I gave you 3 extreme conditions. If you're new to fishing, if you've been fishing forever, you're going to encounter one of those 3, if not all 3 in your fishing. Take these tips, run with them. They're going to help you, I promise. If you like what you're hearing, if you like these instructional videos that we're doing out here in the shop, stop right now. I implore you, stop right now. Hit that subscribe button. You have to subscribe. And if you do, every single week, we're going to send you a new educational video for free. If you're already subscribed, do me a favor. Tell your fishing friends, tell your family members, tell your kids, tell your grandkids about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to help you learn more about the sport and learn more techniques. So I want you to subscribe. Extreme conditions, extreme lures. I hope it helps you. Bye.